Are you worried that the next world war could start in the Middle East? You should be, because the conflict between Israel and Iran is no longer just a distant headline. It's a crisis with the power to shake the entire globe. For years, this was a war fought in the shadows, with cyber attacks, assassinations, and proxy battles across the Middle East. Now, that shadow war has burst into the open. The world is watching as these two powerful nations stand on the brink of direct military confrontation. The situation is incredibly tense. A miscalculation by either side could have devastating consequences not just for the region but for the entire world. The stakes have never been higher, and the path to de-escalation seems narrower by the day, as diplomatic efforts struggle to keep pace with military preparations. What has brought us to this dangerous moment? The core of the conflict lies in Iran's nuclear program. Israel views a nuclear-armed Iran as an existential threat, a danger it cannot tolerate. For its part, Iran insists its program is for peaceful energy purposes only. Yet, its actions tell a more complicated story. The recent breakdown in diplomatic talks, coupled with Iran's advancements in uranium enrichment, has pushed the crisis to a boiling point. This isn't a new disagreement. It's a long-standing feud fueled by deep-seated mistrust, hostile rhetoric, and a history of covert operations that have left both nations feeling perpetually threatened by the other. This escalation matters globally because it threatens to ignite a much wider conflict. The Middle East is a tinderbox, already volatile from the ongoing war in Gaza, which has claimed over 55,000 Palestinian lives since it began. A direct war between Israel and Iran could easily draw in other powerful countries. The United States, a key ally of Israel, finds itself in a difficult position. European nations are also deeply concerned. The potential for disruption to global oil supplies, the creation of a massive refugee crisis, and the empowerment of extremist groups makes this a problem that no one on the planet can afford to ignore. The international community has been scrambling to find a diplomatic off-ramp, but with little success. A sixth round of nuclear talks between the United States and Iran is scheduled in Oman, but optimism is exceptionally low. The American administration, led by President Trump, has demanded that Iran completely halt all uranium enrichment, a condition Tehran has flatly rejected. This diplomatic stalemate has only strengthened the hand of hardliners in both Israel and Iran, who argue that force is the only language the other side understands. As diplomats talk, military planners are finalizing their strategies, creating a dangerous parallel track where war becomes an increasingly plausible outcome. Faced with a diplomatic dead end, Israel is now openly preparing for what was once unthinkable, a unilateral military strike. According to United States and European officials, the Israeli military is ready to act, possibly within days. The primary targets would be Iran's nuclear facilities, some of which are buried deep underground like the Fordow site. The goal would be to set back Iran's nuclear progress by several years, buying time and re-establishing what Israel sees as a critical military deterrent. This is an incredibly risky plan. It would involve a complex, long-range aerial assault, one that would test the limits of the Israeli Air Force and its technological capabilities. The United States has publicly advised against such a strike. President Trump has made it clear that American forces will not participate directly in an Israeli attack. However, Washington might provide crucial intelligence support. This puts the United States in a delicate balancing act. It wants to support its ally, Israel, but it desperately wants to avoid being dragged into another major war in the Middle East. American military bases across the region would become immediate targets for Iranian retaliation, a fact that has led the United States to partially evacuate embassy staff and authorize the departure of military families, a clear sign of how seriously they view the threat. Israel's window of opportunity for a manned strike may be closing. In October 2024, Israeli forces reportedly managed to damage a significant portion of Iran's advanced S-300 air defense systems. This success created a temporary vulnerability in Iran's defenses. Now, Iran is working frantically to repair and rebuild those systems. For Israeli military planners, the clock is ticking. Every day that passes makes a potential attack more difficult and more dangerous for their pilots. This sense of urgency is driving the current crisis, pushing the Israeli government toward a decision that could reshape the entire region in an instant. In response to the threat, Iran has been flexing its own military muscle. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has warned of a history-making retaliation if Israel attacks, promising a response far more severe than anything seen before. They have conducted large-scale military drills and recently tested a new ballistic missile capable of carrying a heavy warhead. Furthermore, Iran's defense minister has declared all United States military bases in the region to be legitimate targets. These are not idle threats. Iran has shown its ability to strike its adversaries through its own forces and through its network of proxy militias across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. At the heart of this crisis is Iran's nuclear program and the world's inability to control it. The controversy centers on uranium enrichment. This is the process of concentrating the uranium-235 isotope, which can be used to fuel a nuclear reactor for peaceful energy, but also to create the core of an atomic bomb. Iran is currently enriching uranium up to 60% purity. While it maintains its intentions are peaceful, this level is alarmingly close to the 90% purity needed for a weapon. For international observers and for Israel, this is a red line that has been dangerously crossed, leaving very little room for trust. The international body responsible for monitoring nuclear activities, the International Atomic Energy Agency, recently issued its most serious formal censure of Iran in nearly 2 decades. Led by the United States, Britain, France, and Germany, the resolution found Iran non-compliant with its obligations after inspectors discovered undeclared traces of uranium. This finding shattered any remaining confidence in Iran's claims of transparency. It confirmed the fears of many nations that Iran has not been truthful about the full extent and history of its nuclear activities, raising profound questions about what else it might be hiding from the world. Iran's reaction to the censure was one of defiance, not compliance. Instead of cooperating, Tehran announced it would accelerate its program even further. It declared plans to build a third uranium enrichment site and to install more advanced centrifuges at its heavily fortified Fordo facility. These machines can enrich uranium much faster than older models. This move was a direct challenge to the international community, signaling that Iran would not bow to pressure. It was a clear statement that Tehran believes a powerful nuclear program is its best guarantee against foreign attack, regardless of the diplomatic or economic consequences. This cycle of escalation is what makes the situation so perilous. Each move by one side is seen as a provocation by the other, prompting an even stronger countermove. The diplomatic track is completely broken down. The United States insists on zero enrichment, a non-starter for Iran, which sees a domestic enrichment capability as a national right. With no middle ground in sight, and with Iran's program rapidly advancing, the space for a peaceful resolution is shrinking. The world is now watching a slow-motion collision, where the logic of military action begins to feel, for some, like the only option left on the table. The fear that this conflict could spiral into a third world war is no longer confined to the fringes of political debate. It is a mainstream concern. A direct war between Israel and Iran would be unlike any previous Middle East conflict. It would involve two technologically advanced, well-armed states both capable of inflicting immense damage on one another. The real danger, however, is the chain reaction it would set off. Iran would almost certainly unleash its proxies against Israel and United States interests, igniting fronts in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. This could pull the United States directly into the fighting, a scenario President Trump has tried to avoid. As governments brace for the worst, ordinary people across the Middle East are living with a profound sense of anxiety. In Israel, citizens are accustomed to security threats, but the prospect of a direct war with Iran is a different level of danger. In Iran, despite the government's defiant rhetoric, the public is closely following the news with a mixture of patriotism and dread, hoping for a diplomatic breakthrough but fearing the worst. Even with high inflation and economic struggles, the Iranian rial has remained relatively stable, suggesting people are not panicking yet. The mood is one of tense anticipation, a collective holding of the breath. Meanwhile, other nations are taking concrete steps. The United States has raised its military readiness across the region and is preparing for potential mass casualty events at its bases. Britain has issued new warnings to commercial shipping, fearing that Iran could try to close the Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil transport. A closure of the strait would send shockwaves through the global economy, causing energy prices to skyrocket and potentially triggering a worldwide recession. These are not abstract risks. They are active preparations for a conflict that many now see as more likely than not. What happens next is uncertain, but the path forward is fraught with peril. A last-minute diplomatic breakthrough could still avert disaster, but it would require a major concession from either the United States or Iran, something neither side seems willing to offer. The alternative is an Israeli strike, which would unleash a cycle of retaliation and counter-retaliation with no clear end. The world is watching the Middle East with a sense of helplessness, hoping that reason will prevail over the drumbeat of war. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks will not only determine the fate of millions in the region, but could also define the global security landscape for a generation.